Hi, Steve Kaufman here, and today I have a special guest, Anna Tyree of English Like a Native, and we're going to talk about learning English, not other exotic languages that I often talk about. First, though, remember, if you enjoy my videos, please subscribe, click on the bell for notifications, and if you follow me on a podcast service, please leave a comment. Hi, Anna.
Hello, Steve. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So, I often talk about learning other languages. You know, right now it's Persian and Arabic, or people are learning Japanese or French. But you teach English, which is probably the language, by far, in fact, the language that most people are learning. So I'm a native speaker of English, but I'm curious. First of all, I have a number of questions. Question number one. Oh, and by the way, we will leave a link to English Like a Native in our description box so people can go there and find you. And I know a lot of people listen to my videos in order to improve their English, and so maybe they would benefit, in fact, by going to your YouTube channel. Now, first question. What are the main sort of countries of, the nationalities of people who are learning English with you?
So with me, I mean, as you can imagine, I've got people from all over the world, but I'd say the majority of my learners, funnily enough, is UK, US, Italy, India, and then it really kind of dissipates. So
right.
I've got Brazil, but that's because a lot of the people who watch my content are actually living and working in English-speaking countries, and so they really have that need and motivation to improve their English. And so that's why I have this kind of demographic in English-speaking countries.
Right.
But outside of the UK and US, it is Brazil, India, and Europe, across Europe.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, so then that's why I asked sort of the nationality or the ethnicity of these learners. Mm-hmm. So what would be the main sort of ethnic groups within the UK or the US? What are the native languages?
Spanish.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Italian, British, Italian, Brazilian, Indian, Polish,
mm-hmm.
Russian.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real mix.
A real mix. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And
we're talking about small percentages.
Right.
Across the globe.
And what are the major difficulties that people experience in learning English?
So, across the board, many of them have confidence issues, and
mm-hmm.
that really starts to present itself when it comes to speaking the language.
Mm-hmm.
So many of them get themselves to an upper intermediate, even at lower advanced level,
mm-hmm.
but still feel unable to communicate vocally, and they just kind of hit a wall. They can't recall the vocabulary,
mm-hmm.
they're thinking too much about the grammar and the structure of the sentences,
mm-hmm.
and they just feel really inhibited, and not wanting to make mistakes,
mm-hmm.
and worried about pronunciation and things. So I think one of the things we try and do on English Like a Native is just to kind of break down that fear, and also just to encourage them to speak as much as possible. It's really important to just get going, right? To make mistakes. And
I mean, that's not unique to people learning English. That's common to people learning any language. Mm-hmm. Would you say that to some extent their fear of making mistakes almost makes them make more mistakes?
I think it's true in anything you're learning. If you get scared, if your brain is scared and you get those stress hormones, your brain doesn't function in the same way as it would when you're relaxed. And so, I would say you do make more mistakes. And you become, it's like, I always say to my students to imagine there's a bus going down the hill and the bus has no brakes and it's getting faster and faster and faster. And you can either choose to sit at the back of the bus and cower and let the nerves just take over and ruin everything, or you can jump into the driver's seat and at least steer those nerves and just try and take control of that energy and change the energy into a positive energy is what I always try and push.
Well, I mean, it is true. If we're at a party somewhere and somebody walks in and who is that person, and you try to force yourself to remember the name, you won't remember the name. The more pressure you put on yourself to try to remember something, the less likely you are to remember it. So, yeah. So is the concern, though, is it more that they feel they have problems with grammar? Is it that they don't have enough vocabulary? Or is it concerns about pronunciation?
So with English, pronunciation is tricky because our spellings do not inform the pronunciation. Our spellings are crazy, and I think American English is easier. Your system for writing is much. It makes more sense for the pronunciation, but the British English spellings do not make as much sense at all.
Well, I hadn't even focused on that. How are they different?
So, for example, an example is flavor or color. So, color. American English is C-O-L-O-R, but in British English we have a U in there, so it's C-O-L-O-U-R.
But we have that in Canada too. We have that in Canada too. But they never really thought of it as a problem. But the bigger issues are like although and bow and through and cough and rough are all written with O-U-G-H, and they're pronounced differently. And that's true on both sides of the Atlantic. So, English spelling is a problem. And do you think then the pronunciation, the difficulties people have in English with English pronunciation comes from the spelling, or that's just one of the factors?
It's one of the factors, and that the rules aren't very consistent either with pronunciation. So that's tricky. But also one of the biggest issues for learning English is the idiomatic language and the phrasal verbs. Because there's no blanket rule. Again, you have to learn on a case-by-case basis, and we use so many phrasal verbs and so many idioms in just day-to-day speaking that you can know the vocabulary but not know the phrases. And so that's tricky, and that just requires exposure. You just have to keep exposing yourself to that kind of language. To native speakers, and this is so the name of my channel, English Like a Native, is it's a little bit of people see it as a negative thing sometimes in the industry to do something like a native. You'll never be a native of that language, so why should you try to be like a native? That was never the point of my brand name. The brand name is more about acquiring and learning like a native does. So not stressing about grammar rules and spending more time just listening and enjoying language in the same way you would your target language. So watching films in your target language, and hanging out with friends and speaking in your target language in a relaxed environment, and just trying to enjoy it rather than sit and study the rules. Because to be honest, most natives do not know their own language in the way that a non-native would. We don't know the grammar rules. We never study them, we just acquire them. We just understand that something sounds right or something sounds wrong. And sometimes we make mistakes as a standard thing across the UK. You know, in the north there'll be grammar mistakes that are just an accepted way of speaking. It's just what we say.
Well, we have that everywhere now. I mean, in North America, you hear people say, I would have went.
Okay.
You know, it's becoming more and more common. It's just, it sounds so bad to me, but a lot of people say that. So, I agree with you. You know, I think the native is the model. You can't get away from that. The native is the model. Even though we're not going to sound like a native, but that's, in fact, we want to get as close as possible to the native. It's a bit of a problem in English because even within a country like the UK, there's so many regional accents. So which native are you going to, you know, which form of the language, which type of pronunciation is the most popular with your learners? Who do they want to sound like?
Well, I on my channel, I cover a number of regional accents, regional British accents, and I do also cover a lot of differences between American English and British English because people are interested. American English is more globally studied.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and it's the same in America, of course. There's lots of variations of American accents that are wildly different. But what I teach RP, which in fact, there are not many people in the UK who actually use RP But
Now, just to explain to my audience, what is RP?
RP is received pronunciation, and
Right.
it's the standard. People don't like this word. Natives don't like this word, but it's the standard accent of British because it's what's written in the dictionaries. It's it's non-regional. It doesn't belong to a region. It was introduced many, many years ago as a way of speaking if you were educated, and this is why it has a bad reputation in the UK, because if you speak like this with an RP, then people assume that you're very wealthy and snobby, posh, well educated, and that you look down on the lower classes, which is crazy now, because that's not it is what it is. I don't want to open that can of worms.
Right.
But what's important, I think, if you want to learn British English or any variation of English, I don't think it really matters. It has to be something you want to learn, like what you feel passionate about, because I can understand anyone speaking English, whatever variation it is. There might be a few little regional differences, dialect that's different, but generally it doesn't matter which version you go for. But if you're going to move to an English-speaking country, I'd always say perhaps it's interesting. It would be good for you to learn or become familiar with that particular regional accent, or at least the dialect. Because, for example, Scousers in Liverpool in the north of England have a very different way of talking than I do. And if you learnt from me and never exposed yourself to a Scouse accent or any of their dialect, you'd arrive there and not have a clue what anyone was saying.
Right.
So I think it depends on your situation and also what you're passionate about.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I think that it's true to a large extent with any language. When I was learning Portuguese or Spanish, I would listen to Portuguese from Europe, Portuguese from Brazil, because my goal is comprehension. But then I find that when we're learning another language, we're very easily influenced. Like our accent in our own language is not going to change. I can live in the UK for 20 years, I'll still speak the way I speak now. But if I'm in France, if I'm in southern France, if I'm Quebec, if I'm in Brazil, I find that these languages that I have learned, I'm easily influenced by the people around me, so that my accent will kind of, adapt to the environment. But the key is pronunciation. I agree. Excuse me, is comprehension. We've got to be able to understand. So I think people should listen to all kinds of different accents. Getting back to this phrasal verbs, that always comes up. So do you have a special technique for people, or you just say, just expose yourself to a lot of the language and you'll eventually get used to them?
Yeah. So I actually have a challenge that I run a couple of times a year, and it's a 30-day challenge where I'll teach 300 phrasal verbs in 30 days. And the method is quite simple. It's 30 days of immersing yourself. So you have to give at least 20 to 30 minutes. Most of my students who do it do about an hour a day. And it doesn't matter if you miss a day, it's all the materials there, you can catch up. But the method that I use is to just use the vocabulary at least 4 or 5 times. So every phrasal verb you'll be introduced to in different ways. You'll have to write it, there'll be quizzes with it, there'll be a number of monologues that you have to listen to, sketches. When I do my live lessons, I'll use those. I'll use them in emails to my students across the 30 days. And so they'll see each phrasal verb at least 4 or 5 times. And what I find with the students who do that challenge is they suddenly become like, they take the blinkers off and they see that language then in the wider world. And they would come back to me and say, I didn't realise, but I was at this lecture and they used this phrasal verb and that phrasal verb, and I was reading this book a second time and I realised this is the phrasal verb that means this, and now I get it. It means something different. And so it's just that repetition, but in a very natural way, not saying we are going to sit and learn this list, but here's an interesting story I'm going to tell you, and here's some tasks I was going to do, and by the end of it, you won't have realised, but you would have learned this many phrasal verbs.
It's very interesting, and maybe we'll close on this. Like, phrasal verbs is just part of usage in English, part of the usage of the language. Normal usage, we use a lot of phrasal verbs. Grammar is a form of usage. I find that, maybe with your students, when they do this phrasal verb challenge, in many cases, if they've had a lot of exposure to the language, have done a lot of listening and reading, they already have heard these phrasal verbs. And so on the, based on having that experience, having heard these phrasal verbs, but not really paid enough attention to them, if they then go and do these deliberate exercises, they're going to have a better chance at retaining them. If you try to introduce phrasal verbs from scratch to people who have not had any exposure to the language, I think it's very tough to remember them. And I think that's kind of the way languages work. You need that combination of exposure, some deliberate learning, back to more exposure, and gradually things start to stick in your brain.
Absolutely.
Hopefully. Anyway, sounds very interesting. I'm sure we could go on for quite a while here. I think my listeners, those who are learning English, should go off to learn like
English like a native.
Like a native. English like a native with Anna, and work on phrasal verbs or all of the other things. I looked at your channel. You have a lot of things on vocabulary, on different aspects of English pronunciation. I think it can be very helpful to them. Thank you very much for talking with me, and hopefully this is helpful to my viewers.
Thank you for having me.